And we begin with breaking news this afternoon. As Victoria's second wave of COVID-19 gets worse, just this morning, Minister Jenny Mikakos revealed a massive 75 new cases have been recorded in just one day. The Minister broke down the statistics in a press conference a little earlier.
So this takes us to a total of 2,099 confirmed cases of coronavirus in Victoria. There's a net increase of 71 cases as 4 previous indeterminate cases have been reclassified. So the breakdown is we have 1 case in hotel quarantine, 14 linked to outbreaks, 37 were detected through routine testing, and 23 are still under investigation. And as you would appreciate, as new cases come through, in some cases very late into the previous evening, we're still looking, and the department is still looking at potential further links to known outbreaks of those ones that are both through routine testing as well as the ones under investigation.
That footage courtesy of 9 News, and Premier Daniel Andrews hasn't ruled out imposing lockdowns on so-called hotspots. Ben, as a Victorian, would you be happy for these lockdowns to be put in place?
Yeah, I think that we could see that kind of coming about a week ago. And I think that the idea of having area restrictions would be great. I think in these particular areas that have been heavily affected and these cases have arisen, I think we need to quarantine those. I don't necessarily think we need to go into a full state lockdown at this stage. I think it'd be interesting to see if we can do a partial lockdown with where these issues are. And also, it looks that schools to be a bit of an issue as well with some of the viruses spreading there, and I believe that those schools are being locked down as well. So, look, I think it's going to be an interesting time. And like I've always said, it's going to be a bit of a zigzag and a bit of a back and forward before we completely understand, what we're dealing with.
Well, Robbo, everyone wanted these restrictions to ease. Queensland's been in a lot of trouble, and in more breaking news, the West Coast versus Richmond match has been postponed. It's forced a major revamp of round 5, my apologies. The AFL are now having to deal with this. Restrictions are there for a reason. We've become too complacent, haven't we?
A very good point from both of you, but I think this is the point. Everyone wants to get back out there and do their thing, but it's if you do it too quickly, then you stay in the lockdown, in the lockdown environment. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. The AFL started too early. The NRL is just lucky at the moment, but I can't imagine that the NRL season will go, full speed the whole time. This season. I just can't imagine that it would work that way. There is going to be people who get sick from it. The other thing is, in this, we were talking about a lot where Dan Andrews is very tough. Obviously, he's been named Dictator Dan in the press and everything. I was reading, and I hate to admit this, but I was reading Andrew Bolt, and he was saying that the biggest problems were that they were putting on these really big restrictions, on one side, but they weren't actually doing the restrictions when people were sick. The quarantine wasn't strict. So that's how it kind of exploded in Victoria. I thought that was a really interesting point. Obviously, we're going to take it with a grain of salt.
Although there's been a lot of misinformation about this, hasn't there, Robbo? Because some people are trying to blame the Black Lives Matter protests, and there is no evidence to suggest that, while I think it was stupid for everyone to be congregated together, there's no actual evidence to suggest that there has been a spread because of the protests. But Andrews came under fire for blaming families, but, it's like we don't like facts in this country sometimes. The statistics show families have spread this disease, doesn't it?
Exactly right. We like facts when they suit us, when it means that we can go back to the beach and go back to the pub. I think it's one of those things, unless it affects you directly, it's almost like we're getting kind of desensitized to it. Well, I don't know anyone that's got it. I don't know anyone who died from it. So why do I have to worry about it? Exactly the wrong thing. I think it's harder in this day and age, when we're so kind of connected, but so kind of disconnected. We want to do what we want, when we want. We want what we want when we want it. And I think that's probably really affecting how this is all happening together. What they're saying is things like, people who are infected were put into hotels, and then the security guards were not given any training or not specific training. They then took, the disease that they caught from the people in the hotel back to their families. There was no actual kind of quarantine of the sites, as opposed to, well, you can't hug your grandmother, you can't see your mother on Mother's Day. I can see where people are starting to get a little bit negative about the Andrews government.
It's the Ben, Rob and Robbo, Ben, Rob and Robbo Show.